My name is Marina Lowell, and at 72 years old, I thought I had already endured the harshest blows life could offer. I survived the loss of my parents, the turbulence of youth, the long nights of motherhood, and most recently, the death of my husband, Gerald. But nothing, not grief, not aging, not loneliness, prepared me for the phone call that shattered the last illusion I had about my daughter. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was sitting in the clinic's waiting room for my annual checkup, flipping through an outdated gardening magazine, when my phone rang. The caller ID displayed a name that always brought a flutter to my heart. Elena, my only child, my pride, my purpose. But the voice that greeted me was not the warm, hurried one I was used to. It was cold, stiff, almost rehearsed. "Mom," she said, "we're leaving for Europe tomorrow. It was a sudden opportunity. I already sold your lakeside cottage and your car to cover the travel expenses. We'll talk when we're back. Bye." Before I could comprehend what she said, before I could even breathe, she hung up. I sat, frozen. The words, "I sold your cottage and your car," echoed in my mind like an insult shouted through a megaphone. At first, I thought my heart might stop. My daughter, the person I had given everything to, had, without hesitation, discarded my belongings, the memories of my husband, the symbols of a lifetime spent building a home. But as the shock settled, something unexpected happened. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. A quiet, cold calm washed over me, and under that calm, something else stirred, a knowledge I had forgotten. 3 days before his heart stopped while we shared our usual breakfast of toast and coffee, Gerald had pressed a sealed envelope into my hands. "Marina," he said gently, "put this somewhere safe. Open it only when you feel ready, not before." At the time, I thought it was a sentimental letter, something to comfort me after he was gone. In my grief, I tucked it away and forgot about it. Until now. As the nurse called my name, I stood up on shaky legs. The doctor's examination passed in a blur. He said my health was stable, my heart was strong, my blood work fine. He recommended rest and nutritious meals. I nodded mindlessly, but my thoughts were far from him. They were on Elena, on the coldness in her voice, on the cottage where Gerald and I had spent 30 summers, on his old station wagon, still smelling faintly of cedar and pipe tobacco, now in the hands of a stranger, and on the envelope. I took the bus home. Without the car Gerald had spent years maintaining, I had no other choice. The bus rattled down the familiar streets, past bakeries and hardware stores and old stone houses, and I found myself staring out the window with a strange sense of detachment. The world bustled on, unaware that the floor beneath my life had shifted. When I reached home, I walked straight to my bedroom. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled open the drawer of my old oak dresser, and there it was, the manila envelope, exactly where I had placed it months ago. Gerald's handwriting, steady, deliberate, spelled my name across the front. I sat on the edge of the bed, the room dimming with the late afternoon sun. After a moment of stillness, I opened it. Inside was a neatly folded letter and a thick stack of documents. My breath caught. "My dearest Marina," the letter began, "if you are reading this, then I am no longer by your side. I wanted to spare you worry during my lifetime, so I kept certain matters quiet. But now you must know the truth." I unfolded the documents with trembling fingers. Property deeds, financial statements, investment certificates, pages and pages of legal paperwork. Over the years, I invested our savings in places you never knew about. Quietly, carefully, I built a foundation to secure your future. You are the sole owner of a holding company that owns multiple properties, homes, rental buildings, commercial lots, and shares in several thriving businesses. The cottage was not our only asset. You own far more than you realize. You are financially safe. I made sure of it. I pressed a hand to my chest, overwhelmed. Gerald had always been steady, modest, disciplined. A schoolteacher, quiet and practical. I knew he saved diligently, but this was beyond anything I had ever imagined. 6 properties, 3 business portfolios, substantial savings. And through the holding company he created, I was the legal owner of all of it. A single tear slipped down my cheek, not from sadness, but from awe, astonishment, and perhaps a little anger. Why had he kept this from me? Why had he carried this responsibility alone? But his next words gave me the answer. You know our daughter's nature, my love. Elena's heart is good, but it is easily swayed. I did not want her to love us or appear to love us because of money. I didn't want greed to change her, as I have seen happen to others. So I chose silence. Silence. The inheritance of silence. I read the letter twice, 3 times, and slowly clarity dawned. Elena believed she had taken everything from me, but she didn't know that she had taken nothing at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house touching the framed photos, the knit blankets and the vases Gerald had bought me every anniversary. I wondered when Elena's affection for me had turned into calculation, when Gerald's warnings about her impulsive husband Patrick had become prophecies. Elena and Patrick had taken advantage of my grief, sold what wasn't theirs, abandoned me as if I were an inconvenience. But they've forgotten one thing. I wasn't powerless. I still had everything Gerald left me. And now I had a decision to make. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Grief had weighed me down since the day Gerald's heart failed beside me at the breakfast table. But now, something else had taken its place. Purpose. Sharp, steady purpose. Elena thought she had stripped me bare, left me with nothing. Instead, she had unknowingly handed me the perfect opportunity to see her without illusions, to understand who she had become. But understanding was only the first step. The next was action. After a simple breakfast of oatmeal and fruit, I called Mr. Fenwick, the attorney who had handled Gerald's will. He had attended the funeral, offering his condolences with genuine kindness. He had also given me his card, saying, "If you ever need help sorting through legal matters, don't hesitate." Well, I needed him now. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Lowell, how are you holding up?" "As well as can be expected," I replied calmly. "I need to meet with you. There are documents Gerald left me that I don't fully understand." "Of course. I have an opening this afternoon at 3. I'll be there." After hanging up, I spent the next few hours tidying the house. Cleaning soothed me. It gave my hands something to do while my mind pieced together a strategy. Because that's what I needed, a strategy. Not revenge, exactly. I wasn't fueled by the desire to hurt Elena the way she had hurt me. No. I wanted understanding, accountability, growth. I wanted my daughter back. Not the cold, transactional woman who had called me from that clinic, but the girl who once braided flowers into my hair and held my hand during thunderstorms. If she could remember that version of herself, if she could grow toward it again, then everything I endured these past weeks would be worth it. At 2 o'clock, I dressed carefully. I chose a navy dress Gerald always liked,
brushed my hair into a neat bun, and applied a touch of lipstick. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had been shaken, but not defeated. At Free Sharp, I walked into Mr. Fenwick's office, a modest but elegant space with tall windows and mahogany shelves lined with thick legal texts. He greeted me warmly. "Please, have a seat." I placed Gerald's envelope and documents on his desk. "My husband left me all of this. I didn't know any of it existed. I need you to explain what it all means." The moment he unfolded the papers, his eyes widened slightly, just enough for me to notice. "Mrs. Lowell," he said after a long pause, "this is substantial." "I gathered that," I said gently. He went through everything, the properties, the accounts, the business shares. The holding company Gerald had created, Lowell and Rains Holdings, was airtight. Legally, it was mine alone. Elena had no rights to any of it, not even a sliver. He ended with, "Your husband was exceptionally prudent and remarkably discreet." Yes, that was Gerald. "Mr. Fenwick, I need to regain full control of every asset, and I need the process handled quietly." He nodded. "I can begin immediately." "One more thing," I added. "The lakeside cottage, my daughter sold it without my consent." "That sale is null and void," he said firmly. "She had no legal authority over it. I can have it returned to you within a week." A knot in my chest loosened. "Thank you." When I left the office, the afternoon sun felt warmer than usual. I walked slowly down the street, letting the breeze carry away the last remnants of the panic Elena's phone call had caused. My steps felt lighter. For the first time since Gerald's death, I felt like myself again. That evening, I stood at the kitchen window watching the sky fade into lavender and gold. The house was quiet, too quiet, but I didn't feel lonely. Gerald was gone, yes, but he had left me a path, a way forward, a way to rebuild not just my life, but perhaps even my relationship with our daughter. In the following days, Mr. Fenwick worked with impressive efficiency. He called regularly with updates. The cottage would be returned, the station wagon located, the transfer of company control underway. I listened, took notes, thanked him, and kept to my routine. To the outside world, I remained the same old widow navigating loss and financial hardship. Neighbors offered sympathy, casseroles, assistance. I smiled warmly and accepted their kindness, all while keeping the truth tucked safely in my chest. But beneath that calm exterior, I was rebuilding, quietly, steadily. One afternoon, as I watered the front garden, my neighbor Clara, a plump woman with an endless supply of gossip,
Elena's voice, thin, frayed, almost unrecognizable, echoed in my ear. "Mom, can I come home?" For several seconds, all I heard afterward was her breathing. Fast, uneven, desperate. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, the phone pressed against my cheek, the kettle whistling faintly behind me. Everything in the room existed at a distance, muted by the weight of her question. This was not the confident, sharp-tongued daughter who had called to inform me she sold my belongings without hesitation. This was someone frightened. "What's happened, Elena?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and neutral. She choked out a breath. "Mom, everything has fallen apart. Patrick, he's not coming back. I don't even know where he is. I didn't know who else to call." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Start from the beginning." There was a long, trembling pause. Then, in a fragile voice, she said, "Can I explain in person, please?" I closed my eyes. Despite everything she had done, a part of me softened at the smallness in her tone. "Yes," I said quietly. "Come home." She arrived 40 minutes later. I saw her through the living room window, climbing slowly out of a taxi.
Her shoulders were slumped, her hair unbrushed, her normally polished appearance completely undone. When she finally stepped onto the porch, she looked 10 years older than she had the last time I saw her. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. "Come in, Elena," I murmured, stepping aside. She walked inside like a person entering a sanctuary after a storm. Her eyes darted around the familiar space, as if grounding herself with objects she had once taken for granted: family photographs, the old wooden clock, the embroidered cushions her grandmother made. She sank into the sofa without waiting for an invitation, burying her face in her hands. "I've made a mess of everything." I sat across from her. "Tell me what happened." Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Patrick convinced me Europe was our chance to start over. He said he had investments lined up. He said traveling together would bring us closer." She laughed bitterly. And like a fool, I believed him. I didn't question anything. "And the cottage?" I asked softly. She winced. "He said selling it was temporary, that we'd buy it back, that it was the only way to secure his business deal." I didn't realize how naive I was being. I listened without interrupting. Once we got to Vienna, nothing he promised existed. No investors, no business partners, nothing. Her fingers twisted in her lap. He changed. He stopped talking to me, blamed me for being negative. Then 2 weeks ago, he left, just left. And I've been getting messages from banks. Apparently, I co-signed loans. I never signed anything. He must have copied my signature. And now I'm responsible. I don't have money. I don't even have a place to stay. She lifted her face. Tears streaked her makeup, leaving uneven smudges across her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything. For what I did to you. For dragging you into this." The apology was quiet, raw, yet I didn't rush to comfort her. Some wounds were too deep for immediate soothing. Some lessons needed time to settle. "You were betrayed," I said gently, "but not only by Patrick." She flinched at that truth. "You betrayed yourself. You trusted someone else's voice over your own, and you trusted someone else's ambition more than your own judgment." She nodded, tears falling silently. "Do you want to stay here for now?" I asked. Her head snapped up, hope flickering in her eyes. I can? After what I put you through?" "For now," I repeated. She accepted the condition with a small, broken nod. After she went to the guest room, her old childhood bedroom still painted in faded lavender, I took a long moment to breathe. Seeing her so devastated stirred emotions I didn't expect. Sympathy, yes, but sadness too, and a faint lingering ache that she had to hit bottom first before seeing the truth. For the next few days, Elena drifted through the house like a shadow. She cleaned without being asked, cooked simple meals, tried to stay out of my way. At night, I heard her crying softly through the walls. Not loud sobs, quiet, stifled cries of someone trying not to be a burden. One afternoon, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with her head rested on folded arms. She looked up the moment she sensed me. "I don't understand how everything collapsed so fast. One minute, I thought we were building a life. The next, I'm here, with nothing." "You have something," I corrected gently. "You have the chance to start again. That's not nothing." She gave a humorless laugh. "A chance, maybe, but I can't even trust myself anymore." "You shouldn't trust blindly, but learning caution is not weakness, it's wisdom." She stared at me, eyes glossy. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." I nodded. "Then show me, with actions, not words." Her expression tightened with determination and shame. "I will," she whispered. "I promise." That evening, we shared dinner in silence. Not uncomfortable silence, simply the quiet of two people tiptoeing around a fragile new beginning. Afterward, Elena helped me pack away leftovers and wipe the counters. As she rinsed the last plate, she hesitated. "Mom, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "When I called you from Europe, when I told you everything was sold," she wavered. "Were you angry?" I took a long moment before answering. I was hurt, deeply, not by the loss of the cottage or the car. Those were just things, but by the way you spoke to me, so cold, so distant, as if I didn't matter. Her shoulders sagged. "I'm ashamed of how I acted." "Shame can be useful," I said gently, "if you let it guide you towards better choices." She nodded, silent. Later that night, after she retreated to her room, I stayed awake in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring into the dim lampshade glow. She was different now. Softer, shaken, and maybe, for the first time in years, reachable. But there was still so much she didn't know. She had no idea about the holding company Gerald left me. No idea that everything she believed she took from me had already been restored. No idea that now I held every card. And I needed to be careful. Very careful. Alima was wounded, yes, but wounds can make people cling harder, grasp tighter, or lash out unexpectedly. I needed to see who she would become now. I needed to see whether this version of her, the humbled, honest one, was real or temporary. Because soon, she would discover a truth that could either heal our relationship or shatter it permanently.
The morning after Elena returned, I woke earlier than usual. Dawn light filtered into the kitchen in soft pink strokes as I brewed a pot of tea. My thoughts were steady, but layered. Concern, determination, and something I couldn't yet name. I heard soft footsteps behind me. Elena appeared in the doorway wearing one of my old sweaters, her hair tied back loosely. "Good morning," she whispered. "Good morning," I replied, motioning for her to sit. "Would you like tea?" She nodded, her eyes grateful in a way they had never been before. I poured her a cup and sat across from her. For a few minutes we sipped in silence, the quiet punctuated only by the soft ticking of the wall clock Gerald had once repaired 3 times just because he enjoyed the challenge. "Mom," she began, shifting uneasily, "I want to ask, how have you been managing? With me gone. With everything." Ah, there it was. A cautious probe. A test to see whether I had fallen apart or gotten by. "I've been managing," I said simply. She studied my face, searching for cracks. Perhaps she expected bitterness, exhaustion, or dependence, but I gave her none of those things. "I'm glad," she whispered. "Are you?" I asked gently. She swallowed. "Yes, but I also feel guilty. I should have been here. I should have helped you through losing Dad." "Grief doesn't wait for convenience," I said softly, "and you were caught up in your own life." Her shoulders slumped, a mixture of shame and relief. "I was selfish," she admitted. "Patrick convinced me we needed to focus on ourselves. I thought he cared. I thought he knew better." "He knew how to manipulate better," I corrected quietly. She winced, but didn't argue. After a moment, she said,
Mom, I want to fix things. I want to earn your trust back. Good, I said. But understand something, Elena. Trust cannot be demanded. It must be rebuilt, slowly. She nodded, tears gathering again. I let them feel them without stepping in. Some truths needed room to breathe. That afternoon, while Elena napped, exhausted from days of turmoil, I sat in the living room with a folder Mr. Fenwick had dropped off earlier. Inside were clean copies of all the retrieved legal documents and a summary of the holdings Gerald left behind. Everything was in place. The cottage was back under my name. The wagon would arrive in the morning. The business interests were secure. The rental properties were performing well. There was even a detailed list of upcoming dividends. I closed the folder and rested my hands atop it. I could keep this all hidden from Elena forever. I could maintain the image of the fragile, aging mother she had assumed I was, but I didn't want deceit, not even to protect myself. Still, telling her now would be disastrous. She was vulnerable, unstable. The truth would overwhelm her, or worse, tempt her. For once in her life, she needed to rebuild herself, not latch on to what someone else could provide. So I tucked the folder safely away in my bedroom drawer. Not yet, I thought. Not until I see who you really are becoming. By evening, Elena emerged from her room and offered to cook. She wasn't much of a chef, never had been, but she insisted on making a simple pasta dish. I watched her move around the kitchen, surprisingly tentatively, as though she were afraid of taking up too much space. Every time she reached for a bowl or utensil, she hesitated, glancing at me for approval. When she placed the meal on the table, she looked almost proud. It's nothing fancy, but I wanted to contribute. Thank you, I said sincerely. It smells lovely. We ate quietly for a few minutes. Then she set her fork down and said, Mom, I talked to the bank today. They confirmed the loans. They're massive. I don't know how to pay them. Did they confirm they were forged? I asked. They're not sure. The signatures look like mine. They need to investigate further. If Patrick forged them, that would be a criminal offense. She looked sick. I don't want him to go to prison. I stared at her for a long moment. Elena, I said gently, he abandoned you with debts, lied about your assets, and disappeared with another woman. If he forged your name, he committed a crime, not you. She shook her head, unable to reconcile the legal truth with her emotional attachment. He loved me once, she whispered. Perhaps he loved what you could do for him. That is not the same. Her lips trembled. He used you, Elena, and now you must face the consequences, not for his actions, but for trusting without question. She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. For the first time in a long while, I reached across the table and took her hand. You are not alone, I said softly, but you must face this. You must take responsibility where it is yours and release what is not. She clutched my hand tightly, like a child. Later that night, as I washed the dishes, Elena approached me again. Mom, I want to help you with anything. Groceries, gardening, repairs, whatever you need. I appreciate that, I said, but right now the help you owe is to yourself. Take time to regain your footing. But I want to give back, she insisted, almost frantic. I have to. I dried my hands and turned to her. Then start by being honest. With yourself, with me, with the people investigating the loans, and with the truth of what happened between you and Patrick. She nodded slowly, as if the weight of her own story finally settled on her shoulders. I'm trying, she whispered. I know. She hesitated, then said, "Mom, are you sure you're okay financially? Do you need help paying bills? I don't have much, but—" For a brief moment, I almost laughed. If only she knew. But I kept my expression calm. "I am managing," I said. "Truly." She studied me again, but seeing no desperation or strain, she finally nodded. "Okay," she whispered, "if you say so." Someday, I thought. Someday you will know everything, but not today. Later, after she went to bed, I walked through the quiet hallway, each step echoing softly on the wooden floor. In the guest room doorway, I paused to watch her sleeping beneath the old quilt. She looked so young like that, so breakable. Gerald had feared this. He had feared she would drift through life relying on others, him, me, Patrick, without ever learning to stand on her own. Now she had the chance to learn, but only if I let her. I closed her door gently. Tomorrow she would face the bank again. Tomorrow I would meet with Mr. Fenwick about the next steps concerning our assets. Two separate paths, for now. But soon those paths would collide. And when they did, Elena would discover the part of my life she never imagined existed. The next morning began with the low rumble of a delivery truck pulling into the driveway. I was still buttering a slice of toast when a firm knock sounded at the front door. Elena, who had barely touched her coffee, looked up with startled eyes. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked. "No," I said calmly, though I already suspected what it was. When I opened the door, two men stood on the porch beside a familiar vehicle, a restored, cream-colored station wagon, its paint newly polished, headlights glinting like small suns. "Delivery for Mrs. Marina Lowell," one of the men said. "Vehicle registered under your late husband's name, fully transferred back to your possession." I nodded. "Thank you. Please park it in the garage." As they drove it in, Elena approached behind me. Her eyes widened as recognition struck. "Mom, that's Dad's car. How is it here?" she whispered. "It was returned," I answered simply. "Returned? But I thought Patrick sold it. He said we needed the money." "And he sold something that wasn't his," I said, stepping back inside. "The mistake was his, not mine." Elena's brows drew together as she processed that. She looked shaken, confused, unsure how something so final could suddenly be reversed. She opened her mouth to ask another question, but I had already turned to the kitchen. She followed me slowly. "Mom, I don't understand. How did you manage to get it back so fast?" I stirred sugar into my tea without answering immediately. There are things you don't know yet, and this is not the moment for those explanations. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. She whispered, backing down. After breakfast, Elena had her meeting at the bank. She insisted on going alone, something I encouraged. Part of rebuilding herself required facing unpleasant truths without leaning on me like a crutch. When the door clicked shut behind her, the house settled into a quiet hum. I cleared the dishes, folded laundry, and moved through routine tasks, though my mind kept drifting back to her. 2 hours later, my phone rang. "Mom," Elena said, her voice trembling, "can I talk to you when I get home? There's something you need to know." "Of course," I said. "Come when you're ready." When she arrived, she looked pale, shaken. She set her purse on the counter and sank into a chair. "What happened?" I asked. "The bank investigator showed me documents," she said quietly. "Not just the loan papers. Emails, contracts, things Patrick submitted using my identity." "And?" I pressed. "And he forged everything, Mom," He used my name to apply for over $75,000 in loans. I inhaled slowly. Elena, I said softly, I'm sorry you had to see that. She laughed a brittle, broken laugh. Sorry doesn't begin to cover it. I thought he was my partner, my husband, but he used me. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. The investigator said they'll pursue fraud charges against him. They asked if I would press charges. I I didn't know what to say. You told the truth, I reminded her gently. That's all you were responsible for. She nodded, eyes shining with a mix of anger and grief. I told them I would cooperate fully. That was the right choice. Her gaze drifted to the window, distant and heavy. Mom, I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. You're someone rebuilding, someone learning. That's not a weakness. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood abruptly and walked to the living room, pacing back and forth as though trying to outrun her thoughts. Then, suddenly, she stopped. Mom, she said, turning to face me, there's something else, something I've avoided admitting. I waited. When Patrick suggested selling the cottage, I didn't fight hard enough. I was tired of worrying about money. I didn't want to admit we were drowning. I let him convince me it was temporary. He choked on his breath. I was wrong. I was so wrong. You made a mistake, I said softly. Many people make mistakes when they're afraid. But I hurt you, she whispered. I abandoned you after Dad died. I sold things that didn't belong to me. I was careless. I stepped closer to her. Yes, I said, you did all of those things. Her eyes welled again. But, I continued, you are here now, and you are taking responsibility. That matters. She covered her face as she cried, quietly, grieving not just Patrick, but the version of herself she no longer wanted to be. That afternoon, she retreated to the backyard with a blanket and a notebook, scribbling thoughts furiously. I watched her from the kitchen window. There was something different about the way she moved now. Calmer, more thoughtful, as though each step was chosen rather than rushed. Later, she came inside and stood in the kitchen doorway. Mom, she said, I want to make things right, really right, not just with words. I raised a brow. And how do you plan to do that? I want to find a job, she said firmly. Not something Patrick arranged, not something handed to me, something I earn myself. The statement surprised me, but pleasantly. Have you ever worked without him? No, she admitted, but that's exactly why I need to. I need to know I can stand on my own. I nodded, genuinely encouraged. That's a good first step. She hesitated. Mom, do you think I can do it? That I can change? I gave her a long, thoughtful look. Yes, I said, slowly. I think you can. But change isn't in grand gestures. It's in daily choices. She took that in with a seriousness I had rarely seen in her. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me. A soft ache formed in my chest. You're my daughter. Loving you doesn't mean ignoring your wrongs. It means believing you can grow beyond them. She wiped her eyes again, but this time her smile, small, tentative, held more strength than sorrow. In the evening, I phoned Mr. Fenwick for a brief update. He informed me that the holding company transition was complete and everything stood firmly under my control. Shall I send the full portfolio summary tomorrow? I said, not yet. Keep things as they are for now. He paused. Still waiting for the right time? Yes, I replied, and I'll know when it comes. After hanging up, I stepped outside to the porch. The sky was streaked with amber and violet, the kind of sunset that made Gerald stop whatever he was doing just to admire it. As I sat there, Elena emerged with 2 cups of chamomile tea, one for herself, one for me. She settled beside me quietly. "Mom," she said after a long silence, "I don't want to be the person I was. I want I want to earn back your trust. I want to be someone you're proud of." I sipped my tea slowly. "Then keep walking the path you began today," I said softly, "because that is how pride is earned, through consistency." She nodded deeply, staring at the horizon as though she could see her future painted in its colors. And for the first time since her return, I believed she might actually change. But as the evening air thickened and the stars emerged, one thought lingered quietly in my mind. When she discovers the truth about the life I've built, the wealth, the properties, the security, will she remain this new version of herself? Or will old habits resurface? Only time would tell. The morning air had a crispness to it, the kind that hinted at early autumn creeping in. I stood at the garden gate trimming wilted roses when Elena stepped outside with her hair neatly brushed and a determined glint in her eyes. "I've made a list," she announced, handing me a folded sheet. I wiped my hands on my apron before opening it. Inside were 3 columns: jobs I can apply for, skills I need to learn, things I need to fix within myself. The last column caught my attention most. Under it she wrote, patience, responsibility, listening, not relying on others for validation, accepting consequences without running. It was raw, honest, surprisingly self-aware. "This is a good start," I said, handing it back. "I thought so too," she replied, though her smile faltered with nerves. "I'm going to the library today. They have computers for job searching." "And transportation?" I asked. She hesitated. "I thought I might walk. It's a bit far, but manageable." "You can take the bus. The station wagon is being serviced today, and walking that far would be exhausting." Her shoulders eased slightly. "Okay, thank you." She left a few minutes later with a backpack and a hopeful stride, the kind I hadn't seen in years. Watching her, I felt something shift inside me, small but unmistakable: pride. But pride didn't erase reality. She was rebuilding herself, yes, but Patrick's shadow still lingered. And soon that shadow would reach our doorstep. By mid-gay, I received a call from Mr. Fenwick. "Mrs. Lowell, I have an update concerning Mr. Patrick Holmes." I exhaled slowly. "Go on." "He has left Europe. His flight entered the country yesterday." My grip tightened on the phone. "He's back?" "Yes, and I have reason to believe he is attempting to avoid prosecution. The banks have issued preliminary fraud alerts. Once you confirm your complaint, the investigation will escalate." I frowned. "I never filed a complaint." "You don't have to. Elena did when she handed over the forged documents." So that's what the mysterious conversation at the bank had been. Mr. Fenwick continued, "I should also mention, records indicate Patrick has been trying to access loan information connected to you."
My breath stilled. To me? Yes, not Elena, you. A quiet chill moved through me. Patrick had already crossed boundaries once. I didn't doubt he'd attempt it again. "Is anything in danger?" I asked. "No," he assured. "Your assets are locked behind the holding company. He cannot touch them. But keep an eye out for unusual communication." "I will." When the call ended, I stood still for a long moment, absorbing the information. Patrick was back in the country, and if he was desperate, and I suspected he was, he might come looking for Elena, or worse, for what he believed she still had access to. I tightened my grip on the garden shears. I would not allow that man to harm her again. Not emotionally, not financially, not under my roof. Elena returned home in the late afternoon, cheeks flushed, steps lighter. "Mom," she called excitedly, "I applied to 6 jobs today, and one woman at the library gave me her card. She said her office sometimes needs temporary assistance." "That's wonderful," I said genuinely. Her smile faded as she studied my expression. Something happened. She always had a strange intuition when it came to my mood. Even as a little girl, she could sense tension before a single word was spoken. "Yes," I said quietly. "I heard from Mr. Fenwick." Her face paled. "About Patrick?" I nodded. Her hands trembled slightly. "Is he coming after me?" "Not directly," I said, "but he has returned to the country, and he attempted to access information related to the loans. You should be cautious." She sank onto the sofa, fingers pressed to her temples. I knew it. I knew he wouldn't let this go quietly. "Elena," I said, sitting beside her, "listen to me. You are safe here. He has no legal power left over anything." "But he has a way of getting into my head," she whispered, "of making me doubt everything. What if he comes here? What if he tries to talk to me?" "Then you won't answer the door," I said firmly, "and you will call the police." She looked up with wide eyes. "I've never called the police on anyone." "You may have to learn." She hugged her arms around herself. "I hate this. I hate that I trusted him so blindly. You're not the first woman to be deceived by someone she thought she loved. You never be the last version of yourself to fall for such a man." She gave a soft, humorless laugh. "I hope so." That evening, after she went to her room, I sat on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea. A soft wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The kind of quiet that usually soothed me felt heavy tonight. I thought about all the years I'd watched Elena grow up. Her sweetness as a child, her fire as a teenager, her bright ambition in her 20s, her desire to outrun sadness after her father's death, and her vulnerability, hidden behind sharp edges. Somewhere along the way, she had drifted toward the wrong man, the wrong values, the wrong life. But now, she was trying. She was truly trying. I wouldn't let Patrick drag her backward. As I sipped my tea, I noticed movement near the end of the street. A car, dark, slow, passing in front of the house twice. My chest tightened. The vehicle didn't stop, didn't linger, just drove past more than once, as though the driver was trying to memorize the area. A coincidence? Perhaps, but something in my bones felt alert. I watched until the car disappeared around the corner. Only then did I exhale. Elena must not know. Not yet. She was fragile, rebuilding, learning to stand. Fear could break that progress. But I would remain vigilant. The next morning, Elena came downstairs brighter than the previous day. "Mom," she said, "I have an interview. Tomorrow. The woman from the library called me late last night." "That's wonderful," I said with genuine pride. She smiled nervously. "Do you think I can do it?" "Yes," I said simply. Her shoulders softened, and she made herself breakfast. Oatmeal, berries, the healthier choices she often ignored when she lived with Patrick. A small change, but an important one. While she ate, she said softly, "Mom, thank you for giving me a chance, for not turning your back. You're my daughter. A chance is the least I can offer." She squeezed my hand, her eyes warm.
For the first time in a long while, our home felt like a home again. But beneath that gentle moment, a quiet truth stirred in me. Elena was changing, but Patrick was still out there, watching, searching, possibly closer than either of us knew. And soon, he would make his move. The day of Elena's interview arrived with an uneasy stillness in the air, the kind that hangs just before a storm. I watched from the kitchen window as she paced the living room, clutching the printed resume she'd spent hours refining the night before. "How do I look?" she asked, stepping into the kitchen. She wore a simple navy blouse and black slacks, nothing flashy, nothing extravagant, just clean, neat, and appropriate. It was the first time in years I'd seen her dress with purpose rather than performance. "You look ready," I said with a warm smile. Her shoulders softened, and she made herself breakfast. Oatmeal, berries, the healthier choices she often ignored when she lived with Patrick. A small change, but an important one. While she ate, she said softly, "Mom, thank you for giving me a chance, for not turning your back. You're my daughter. A chance is the least I can offer." She squeezed my hand, her eyes warm. For the first time in a long while, our home felt like a home again. But beneath that gentle moment, a quiet truth stirred in me. Elena was changing, but Patrick was still out there, watching, searching, possibly closer than either of us knew. And soon, he would make his move. The day of Elena's interview arrived with an uneasy stillness in the air, the kind that hangs just before a storm. I watched from the kitchen window as she paced the living room, clutching the printed resume she'd spent hours refining the night before. "How do I look?" she asked, stepping into the kitchen. She wore a simple navy blouse and black slacks, nothing flashy, nothing extravagant, just clean, neat, and appropriate. It was the first time in years I'd seen her dress with purpose rather than performance. "You look ready," I said with a warm smile. Her shoulders softened, and she made herself breakfast. Oatmeal, berries, the healthier choices she often ignored when she lived with Patrick. A small change, but an important one. While she ate, she said softly, "Mom, thank you for giving me a chance, for not turning your back. You're my daughter. A chance is the least I can offer." She squeezed my hand, her eyes warm. For the first time in a long while, our home felt like a home again. But beneath that gentle moment, a quiet truth stirred in me. Elena was changing, but Patrick was still out there, watching, searching, possibly closer than either of us knew. And soon, he would make his move.
The day of Elena's interview arrived with an uneasy stillness in the air, the kind that hangs just before a storm. I watched from the kitchen window as she paced the living room, clutching the printed resume she'd spent hours refining the night before. "How do I look?" she asked, stepping into the kitchen. She wore a simple navy blouse and black slacks, nothing flashy, nothing extravagant, just clean, neat, and appropriate. It was the first time in years I'd seen her dress with purpose rather than performance. "You look ready," I said with a warm smile. Her shoulders softened. "I hope they like me." "Give them the you that's learning," I said gently, "not the you that's trying to impress." She nodded slowly. "I'll try." Her bus arrived on time, and she left with a mix of anticipation and fear. I stood at the window until she disappeared down the street, her posture stiff but determined. The moment she was gone, the silence in the house sharpened, turning into a kind of tension I couldn't name. I made myself a cup of tea, I kept busy, I watered the plants, but nothing eased the feeling that something was off. And then, just before noon, it happened. A knock at the door. Firm, measured, too familiar.
I froze, the watering can still in my hand. Another knock. 3 taps, spaced evenly. Not a delivery, not a neighbor, not anyone who belonged here. I set the can down quietly and took a slow breath. Then I walked toward the door, stopping just short of the peephole. My heart thudded hard in my chest. Looking through the tiny glass lens, I saw him. Patrick. He was thinner than I remembered, his cheeks hollow, eyes darting sharply around my porch as though searching for threats. His once clean beard had grown patchy. His clothing was wrinkled, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the strain from this side of the door. He looked desperate, dangerous. I didn't open the door. "Mrs. Lowell," he called out, voice muffled but sharp. "I know you're home. I need to talk to you." I didn't move. "Please," he said, louder now. "I just need 5 minutes." I remained silent. My pulse hammered against my ribs. He shifted closer to the door. "Marina, I know Elena's with you. I need to see her." No, absolutely not. Still, I said nothing. After a long moment, he exhaled sharply, a frustrated, almost feral sound. "Fine," he muttered, "but you can't hide her forever." His footsteps retreated, but I didn't breathe until I saw him walk back to a dark sedan parked near the curb. He stood by the driver's door for a moment, scanning the house again, then climbed in and drove away. I stepped back from the door as a shiver ran through me. He found us. When Elena returned home that afternoon, she stepped inside with a wide, hopeful smile. "Mom," she said breathlessly, "it went well, really well. They said I might get a second interview." But the moment she saw my face, her joy faded. "What happened?" I placed a hand on the counter to steady myself. "Patrick came here today." She went utterly still. "What?" she whispered. "He knocked on the door. He asked for you by name. He didn't look well." Her breath hitched. "Oh, God." I stepped closer. "Elena, listen to me carefully. You are not to contact him. Not by phone, not by email, nothing." She pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. "I knew he'd come. I just didn't think it would be so soon." "You are safe," I said firmly, "but we need to be cautious." She sank onto the sofa, shoulders shaking. "Mom, what if he tries to force his way in? What if he follows me?" "Then I will handle it, and so will the police." "But I don't want him arrested," she whispered. "Even after everything, I knelt in front of her and took her hands. "Elena, he does not love you. He used you, and now he's desperate. Desperate men make reckless choices." She cried harder, burying her face in her palms. "We will protect ourselves," I continued gently. "I'll contact Mr. Fenwick about filing a no-contact order." "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know," I said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "But you can't let fear guide your choices. Not anymore." Her breathing slowed and she nodded weakly. "I'm sorry you had to face him alone," she said. "I'm not afraid of him," I replied calmly, "but a part of me was. Not for myself, but for her, and for what he might do next." That evening, as Elena showered and tried to regain her composure, I stepped into the backyard to clear my mind. The sky was painted in streaks of fading gold. Birds chirped in the tall oak tree Gerald once climbed to hang lights every holiday. I needed clarity. I needed strength. Gerald often said that storms reveal truths, not just about the world, but about ourselves. This storm was no different. As I clipped dried basil leaves, I heard a rustling at the side fence. My body stiffened. I turned slowly. A child's blue rubber ball bounced into my yard, followed by the small figure of the neighbor's son, Carter. He smiled shyly. "Sorry, Miss Lowell. It went over the fence." "That's all right, Carter. Here." I retrieved the ball and handed it over. His big brown eyes scanned my face. "Are you okay? You look worried." Children notice more than adults realize. "I'm fine," I reassured him. "Just thinking." He nodded and ran off, but as the fence swayed behind him, something caught my eye. A small, shiny object wedged between two posts. A cigarette butt. Neither I nor Elena smoked. Someone had been standing there recently, watching. My chest tightened. I plucked it from the wood, turning it over in my fingers. Fresh. Still faintly warm. Patrick? Possibly. Or someone he sent. I dropped it into the trash and washed my hands slowly, deliberately. We needed protection. Soon. Not just legal protection, but physical security. But taking measures like that would raise Elena's suspicions, and I couldn't tell her yet, not until I was sure what we were dealing with. That night, after dinner, Elena sat at the table with her notebook again, writing down goals, reflections, plans. I watched her quietly. For the first time, she wasn't planning her life around someone else's dreams. But as she wrote, I caught a flicker of her old self, her uncertainty, her longing for approval. "Mom," she asked softly. "Yes." "Do you believe I can really change?" I met her eyes. "I believe you are changing," I said, "every day. But change is tested, not spoken." She nodded. "I'll keep trying," she whispered. And I believed her. But I also knew something she didn't. Change often requires facing danger. And danger was now circling quietly around our lives. As I turned off the kitchen lights, a thought whispered in the back of my mind, chilling and certain. Patrick will not give up what he thinks he's owed. And soon, he will come back.
By the next morning, I had made a decision. If Patrick was bold enough to return to the house once, he would do it again. And if he was desperate enough to forge Elena's signature for thousands of dollars, he was desperate enough to manipulate, lie, or even threaten to get what he wanted now. I wouldn't allow that. I hired security. Not guards, nothing that would alarm Elena, but a private security service that specialized in discreet home monitoring. Mr. Fenwick recommended them after I explained the situation. Cameras hidden in birdhouses and porch lights, a motion sensor at the gate, and a monitored alarm system disguised as a simple upgrade. Everything would be installed that afternoon. When Elena came downstairs with her hair damp and a hopeful expression, clearly still riding the afterglow of her successful interview, I didn't tell her about the security measures. Not yet. Instead, I greeted her with a calm smile. "How are you feeling this morning?" I asked. "Nervous," she admitted. "They called me yesterday evening. I have my second interview tomorrow." "That's wonderful news." She made herself tea and sat at the kitchen table. After a quiet moment, she said, "Mom, I keep thinking about Patrick. I know you said I'm safe, but—" "You are safe," I repeated firmly, "and soon you'll feel it too." She gave me a small, grateful smile, but her eyes still trembled with uncertainty. Elena wasn't afraid of Patrick hurting her physically. She was afraid of the mental hold he once had over her, afraid that he could shatter her fragile new confidence with a few practiced words. He had conditioned her for years to feel lesser, to feel dependent. Now she was rebuilding. I wouldn't let him break that progress. While she spent the morning researching interview tips, I waited for the security technicians. They arrived just after 10, wearing plain uniforms and carrying nondescript toolboxes. I told them, "Work quietly. My daughter doesn't need to know the details yet." The lead technician nodded. "Most clients feel safe and with discretion.
We'll be quiet as a mouse." By early afternoon, the system was in place. Cameras disguised in porch lanterns, a sensor in the flower bed that blended in perfectly with the soil, a silent alarm accessible by pressing the edge of a picture frame in the entryway. Nothing obtrusive, nothing noticeable. Perfect. After they left, I stood in the front yard inhaling the crisp air. The world seemed calmer, steadier. But calm has a way of breaking swiftly. As I gathered the mail from the box, I caught sight of a familiar car parked down the street. The same dark sedan from before. Patrick. He was sitting behind the wheel, pretending to look at his phone, but his eyes flicked constantly toward the house. A thin ribbon of anger uncoiled inside me, not hot rage, but a cold, controlled fire. I stepped back inside and locked the door. If he thought I was the same timid, grieving woman he once manipulated through Elena, he was badly mistaken. Elena remained unaware. She spent the afternoon preparing for her interview, practicing responses in the mirror, rehearsing scenarios aloud. At one point, she entered the kitchen holding her notebook. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." She sat down, nervous. "Why didn't you break down after Dad died? I mean, I fell apart, completely. But you carried on. You stayed strong." I paused. This was a moment I had anticipated months. "Elena," I said gently, "strength isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, determined." She looked down. "I wish I had that. You're learning it now." She nodded slowly, but I could see the deeper question in her eyes. How did you stay afloat financially? How did you manage everything alone? Part of her still believed I was fragile, dependent, vulnerable. She had no idea how wrong she was. And that truth was coming. Soon. Around 6 in the evening, while I prepared a simple dinner, I noticed Elena lurking near the window. "Mom, I think there's a car watching the house." "Describe it," I said. "Dark sedan, maybe gray. It's been parked there for 20 minutes. I joined her at the window. Patrick had been smart. He'd swapped cars. This one was newer, cleaner, but the posture of the driver was indistinguishable. Elena stepped back, panic welling in her eyes. "Mom, it's him. I know it. I feel it." "Then step away from the window," I said calmly. She obeyed instantly. I pulled out my phone and texted the security service's rapid response line. They replied within seconds. "Officer on the way. Stay inside." I showed Elena nothing of what I was doing. Instead, I said, "He cannot come inside and he won't get close. Breathe, sweetheart." She leaned against the wall, trembling. "I don't want to see him. I don't want to hear his voice." "You won't," I said. She believed me, completely. And that belief felt heavier than I expected. Responsibility comes with weight. Within minutes, a discreet security vehicle turned the corner and parked near the sedan. Not close enough to confront, but obvious enough for Patrick to notice. And he did. He stiffened, his head turned sharply. Then, in a frantic motion, he started the engine and sped off. I felt Elena sag with relief. "That's it! He's gone!" she whispered. "For now," I said quietly. She didn't hear the second meaning buried beneath my tone. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room with the file Mr. Fenwick had given me. The holding company documents, the property deeds, the investment summaries. I flipped through them slowly. Every page represented a decision Gerald had made for me. Every asset represented security he wanted me to have. Every detail was part of a life Elena never imagined I possessed. And as I stared at the numbers, the signatures, the property listings, I realized something. Hiding this from Elena wasn't protecting her anymore. It was preventing her from understanding who I truly was. And soon, very soon, she would need the truth. Not just about Patrick, not just about herself, but about me. About the strength I had mastered in silence. About the security her father had built. About the fact that I wasn't a vulnerable widow, but a woman with resources Patrick couldn't begin to comprehend. But I couldn't tell her yet. Not while Patrick still hovered like a storm cloud on the horizon. If she knew the truth now, she might slip back into dependency, rely on my wealth instead of standing on her own. Or worse, Patrick might find a way to twist it. No, I would hold the truth until she was ready. And that moment was coming. As I turned off the lights and prepared for bed, a single thought pulsed steadily in my mind. Patrick is circling closer, and soon he will try again. And when he does, everything, my secrets, Elena's growth, our fragile peace, will collide.
The confrontation begins, and Marina's hidden truth edges toward the surface. The following morning felt heavier than the last, as though the air itself sensed the tension lingering around the house. Elena emerged from her room, dressed for her second interview. Simple gray slacks, a modest blouse, and her hair tied back neatly. She looked nervous, but there was a newfound steadiness to her posture. "Did you sleep?" I asked, pouring her a cup of tea. "A little," she admitted. "I kept imagining Patrick showing up again." "He won't come near you today," I said, with certainty I hoped she didn't question. "What if he follows me to the interview?" "He won't," I repeated, "because he knows he's being watched." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You're not the only one who's grown wiser," I replied gently. "I've taken precautions." Her eyes softened with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. "Mom, what kind of precautions?" Before I could answer, her bus rumbled up the street. "You'll do great today," I said, squeezing her hand. "Focus on your future, not your past." She nodded firmly and hurried out the door. I watched until she disappeared around the corner, her stride far more confident than the day she arrived here, shattered and ashamed. Once she was out of sight, I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Fenwick. "He's circling again," I said without preamble. "I assumed as much," he replied calmly. "Have the security reports come in yet?" "Yes. They confirmed the same man was near the property 3 times yesterday afternoon." "That aligns with what I expected." He sighed. "Marina, it's time we discuss a more direct approach." "I agree," I said quietly. "I won't let him keep her in fear." "And what of Elena? She still doesn't know the extent of your assets. We need to decide when." "Not until this is resolved," I cut in. "She's rebuilding herself. I won't allow her growth to hinge on money." "I respect that," he said. "But once Patrick is confronted, he may try to use your secrecy against her." I exhaled slowly. "I'm prepared." He went silent for a moment, then said, "I'll contact the investigator handling Patrick's case. We'll push for immediate action once we have evidence of harassment." "Thank you." We ended the call. I stared at the quiet house, the polished wooden floors, the framed photos, the vases, the well-worn bookshelves. These walls had held my life, sheltered my grief, kept my secrets. But now they were becoming something else. A shield, a fortress, a battleground. Elena returned from her interview around noon, her face lit with a hopeful glow. "I think I got the job," she said breathlessly, dropping her purse on the table. "They said they'll call later today."
Her joy was so pure that it pierced through all the dread weighing down on me. "That's wonderful," I said, embracing her. "I'm proud of you." But the moment I released her, her smile faltered. "Mom, we need to talk." I gestured for her to sit. "What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath. "Why did you say Patrick knows he's being watched? What did you do?" I paused. This was the crossroads. Tell her enough to calm her, but not enough to reveal everything. "I hired security," I said simply. "Discreet, reliable people who specialize in monitoring dangerous situations." Her brows rose, but she didn't look upset, only stunned. "You hired security?" she repeated softly. "Mom, how did you afford that?" There it was, the first crack in the wall between us. "I've been managing," I said gently. "More than you think." She swallowed hard. "Mom, when I came back here, I thought you were struggling. I thought I'd ruined your life." "You didn't ruin anything," I said firmly, "but you needed to believe you had lost something to understand its value." She stared at me, confused. "Elena," I continued softly, "your father prepared for everything, more than either of us realized." Her eyes widened. "What does that mean?" Before I could answer, a sudden noise cut through the house. The sharp crunch of tires on gravel. We both stiffened. I moved toward the window cautiously. A dark SUV had pulled into the driveway. Not Patrick's car. This one was newer, larger. Two men stepped out wearing gray jackets and carrying professional-looking binders. "Mom? Who are they?" I recognized the emblem on their jackets immediately. The bank's fraud investigation division. Not security, not police, but very, very close. I opened the door before they rang the bell. "Mrs. Lowell," the taller one asked. "Yes. We're here regarding the ongoing case involving Mr. Patrick Holmes." Elena took a step back, fear rippling through her. "It's all right," I told her softly. "They're here to help." The men entered the living room and introduced themselves. Mr. Collins and Miss Heth, senior investigators for the fraud department that handled Patrick's forged loans. "We need to ask some follow-up questions, and we think you should be aware of new developments." Elena sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "What developments?" she whispered. Mr. Collins flipped open a file. "Mr. Holmes has attempted to withdraw funds connected to the fraudulent loans. He appears desperate, unstable, and on the run. We received reports he has attempted to track your location." Elena paled. "He knows where I am?" "He suspected," Miss Heth clarified. "He has no access to your accounts or personal information, but he's been canvassing known addresses." I swallowed a cold wave of anger. "Is he dangerous?" "We consider him high risk," Mr. Collins said bluntly, "and we advise you take protective measures." "I already have," I replied. Surprise flickered across Miss Heth's face. "Good, then you're ahead of most victims." Elena lowered her face into her hands. "How did it get this bad?" she whispered. Mr. Collins closed the file. "Because you trusted someone who saw your kindness as an opportunity." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I don't know how to face him." "You won't have to," Miss Heth said gently. "We're working with local authorities. He'll be taken into custody soon." "And until then?" I asked, my voice steady. "Remain vigilant," Mr. Collins replied. "He will make another attempt." We thanked them and walked them to the door. After their SUV pulled away, Elena slumped onto the sofa, shaking. "Mom, I'm terrified." I sat beside her and wrapped her in my arms. "You're safe," I whispered, "because this time I'm not powerless." She pulled back, confusion etched across her features. "What do you mean?" I inhaled carefully. "Elena," I said softly, There are things you don't know about your father or about me, but you'll know soon. I promise." Her eyes widened, fear mingling with curiosity. "What things?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a message from the security service. "The same vehicle from yesterday is circling the block again. Driver unidentified." My heart hardened. It was time. The truth could no longer wait until Patrick was caught. The truth might be the only thing that could save us. I stood up. "Elena," I said quietly, "come with me. There is something I need to show you, something your father left for us." Blink. Startled. "What is it?" I met her eyes. "The truth. The truth about everything."
Truth, confrontation, and the restoration of a family. Elena followed me down the hallway with hesitant steps, her breathing quick and uneven. She had no idea what I was about to reveal, only that this secret, whatever it was, had been silently guiding my decisions since her father's death. I stopped at my bedroom door, opened it, and walked toward the oak dresser. She stood in the doorway, arms clasped tightly around herself, as though preparing for a blow. From the top drawer, I retrieved the thick folder Mr. Fenwick had organized for me. I held it for a moment, feeling the weight of every choice, every lie of omission, every moment I had stayed silent to protect her. Then I turned to her. "Elena," I said softly, "your father didn't leave me unprepared. He left me protected." I held out the folder. She stared at it as if it were a foreign object. "What is that?" "The truth," I said, "the life he built for us." With trembling hands, she stepped forward and took it. She opened the first page, expecting perhaps a sentimental letter or a small savings account. Instead, she froze. "Mom, there are properties? Businesses? These numbers, these banks, this—" "Yes," I said quietly, "all yours, through me, all hidden until now." Her eyes darted across the pages. Property deeds, investment portfolios, holding company summaries. 6 homes, multiple rental buildings, a thriving set of business shares, substantial savings. Dad had all this," she breathed. "How? When?" "He built it slowly, quietly. He wanted to protect our future, not inflate our lives. He didn't want wealth to change who you were as a child or who you could become." Her face crumpled. "And I treated you like someone fragile, someone who had nothing. I sold your things. I talked to you like someone you believed was weaker than you," I finished gently. She covered her face with her hands. "Mom, I'm so ashamed." I reached out and touched her shoulder. "Shame is not what I want for you. Understanding is." She lowered her hands, tears streaking her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you weren't ready to hear it. You needed to learn who you were without money, without Patrick, without anyone telling you who to be." She swallowed hard. "And now?" "Now you're ready," I said, "because you're standing on your own for the first time in years." She clutched the folder against her chest as though it might steady her. "But Mom, what if Patrick finds out? What if he—" A sharp noise cut through the house. A car door slammed. Hard. We both froze. I crossed the bedroom in 3 strides and looked out the window. A man stepped out of a dark sedan parked crookedly in the driveway.
Patrick, tense, wild-eyed, radiating desperation. "Elena," I said, my voice low and steady, "go to your room, lock the door." "But go," I repeated firmly. She obeyed, fear flooding her features. I moved toward the living room with a calmness I didn't feel. Patrick's shadow crossed the front porch window just moments before his fist hammered on the door. "Marina, open the door. I know she's here." I inhaled slowly, grounding myself. Then I opened the door just a crack, enough to see him, not enough for him to enter. His face was gaunt, his hair disheveled, and his shirt rumpled. But his eyes, those eyes still carried the manipulative spark he'd used on Elena for years. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Not here for you," I replied calmly. He scoffed. "She has something that belongs to me." "She has nothing of yours." He stepped closer. I didn't move. "Listen, Marina, I know about the bank investigators. I know they're after me. Elena needs to fix this." "No," I said firmly. "You will." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Listen, Marina, if she doesn't help me, I'll go to the police and tell them she was involved." "They already know she wasn't. You forged her signature." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. He masked it quickly with arrogance. "You think you can protect her?" he hissed. "You're just some old—" Before he could finish, the porch light clicked on. A silent alarm triggered from inside the house. 2 security officers stepped into view from the side of the yard, their presence sharp and unmistakable. Patrick spun around, startled. "What the hell is this?" "A precaution," I said simply. The officers approached calmly but firmly. "Sir, you are trespassing on private property and are under suspicion of fraud and harassment. You need to come with us or wait for the police. Your choice." Patrick backed away, panic lighting his face. "You can't do this. She owes me." "No," I said, stepping forward, my voice gaining strength I didn't know I still had. "You owe her. For the years you stole, for the lies you told, for the money you took, and for the woman you nearly destroyed." He shook his head wildly. "Elena, Elena, please." "She won't come out. Not for you. Not anymore." The officers took him by the arms. He resisted weakly, shouting Elena's name, insisting he could explain. But his words didn't penetrate the walls of this home anymore. He was escorted off the porch, down the driveway, and into the waiting vehicle. Within minutes, he was gone. I closed the door with a shaking hand and exhaled slowly. The house fell into a deep, echoing silence. Then Elena stepped out of the hallway, her face pale, tears streaming silently. "Is he gone?" Whispered, "Yes, he's gone." I pulled her into my arms. She cried into my shoulder, deep, guttural sobs of release, grief, relief, and exhaustion. I was so scared. I thought he'd never leave me alone. "He won't return," I said softly. "He won't return." She pulled back, her eyes red and shining. "Mom, I don't deserve your protection, your forgiveness, any of this." "I deserve a chance," I said gently. "You deserve a chance to grow, a chance to heal, a chance to learn to choose better for yourself." Her breath shuddered. "I'll try," she whispered. "I know you will," I said. 1 month later, Elena accepted the job she interviewed for. She paid down the smaller debts she had accumulated and set up a consultation with a financial advisor referred by Mr. Fenwick. Patrick pled guilty to multiple fraud charges and accepted a plea deal that kept him far away from us for years to come. And our home, our quiet, steady home, felt warm again. Elena grew gentler, wiser, more grounded. Some evenings we sat on the porch together, sipping tea, watching the soft glow of sunset. One such evening, she leaned against my shoulder and said softly, "Mom, thank you for believing I could change." I rested my hand over hers. People grow in the right soil, and you finally found yours. She smiled. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace settle gently around us. Not the peace of silence or secrecy, but the peace of truth and healing. A new beginning. End of story. And if you enjoyed this emotional journey of transformation, truth, and healing, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this one. Your support means everything. Best regards, your